Some errors and alterations survived in various ways, with a basic tendency to accumulate. Scribes seldom left out anything lest they omit something inspired, unquote. As a result of all these mistakes, creators of versions of the Bible have been relying upon hundreds of manuscripts containing thousands of errors and disagreements. Imagine what that does to their accuracy. In an attempt to calm believers who fear they may not have a reliable copy of the real Bible in their hands, the apologist Geisler states on page 366 in a book called A General Introduction to the Bible, quote, "At first, the great multitude of variants would seem to be a liability to the integrity of the Bible text. But just the contrary is true. The larger number of variants supplies at the same time the means of checking on those variants. As strange as it may appear, the corruption of the text provides the means for its own correction," unquote. Yes, that's very strange indeed. In fact, it's absurd in view of the fact that more variations on a story only reduce the chance of determining what occurred. An auto accident provides a good example, as police officers will attest. Geisler is trying to tell us that the greater the number of differences, conflicts, clashes, and variants between manuscripts, the greater the possibility of reconstructing the original text, when precisely the opposite is true. As Bucaille said on page 79 in his book, quote, "One might reply that other text may be used for comparison. But how does one choose between variations that change the meaning?" Unquote. More clashes don't contribute to accuracy. On page 78 in the book entitled Reasons Skeptics Should Consider Christianity, apologists McDowell and Stewart also seek to reduce the amount of worry of true believers by stating, quote, "With the abundance of manuscripts, that is, handwritten copies of the New Testament numbering over 25,000, nothing has been lost in the transmission of the text," unquote. But their effort to pacify people is virtually worthless for several reasons. First, even if there were 1,000,000 copies, how do you know that the original is located somewhere in that million? Secondly, and even more importantly, they secretly inserted a rather insidious concept. Notice what they said. Nothing has been lost. That could very well be true. Nothing has been lost. The original is in the 25,000, but where? That's what is being kept behind the scenes. Which one has it? Do we play a shell game? True, the more manuscripts you have, the greater your chance of having the original. But simultaneously, the chance that the original won't be found increases dramatically. It grows by leaps and bounds. It's buried somewhere in a maze of manuscripts, and the greater the number of manuscripts, the less chance you have of finding the real McCoy. That second part is crucial, and that they want to overlook. That they want to avoid. And lastly, if you have a verse in which 3,000 manuscripts contend it says one thing, while 2,000 contend it says something else, why assume the 3,000 are correct and the 2,000 are not? It could be the other way around. To shorten a long story, the greater the number of conflicting copies, the less chance you have of finding what the original said. Even though the original may be in the manuscripts, it's buried within an ever larger number of choices, assuming it's in there at all, and there's no way of knowing which one has it. A tremendous number of manuscripts don't solve the problem, but it only compounds it. Because some biblicist realize reconstructing the originals becomes more difficult with each new manuscript discovery, some have resorted to another defense. They allege that although there are many variances and a great deal of difficulty is involved in recreating the original, none of the variances, none of them affect a major biblical teaching. None alters a fundamental doctrine of Christianity. On pages 44 and 45 of Evidence That Demands a Verdict, McDowell states, quote, "There are some 200,000 variants in the existing manuscripts of the New Testament, but only 50 of these are of great significance. No fundamental doctrine of the Christian faith rests on a disputed reading. A careful study of the variants, the different readings of the various early manuscripts, will reveal that none of them affects a single doctrine of Scripture," unquote. In other words, although manuscript disagreements exist, none of them involves anything of importance. They're all rather trivial. That's a contention that can only be described as ridiculous. I was on a Cincinnati radio station many years ago in which I debated this very issue with a Church of Christ minister. Oddly enough, he showed me a copy of his Bible, the one that he preferred, the American Standard Version of 1901,